Remember that Pokemon Go update a while ago that changed the values of all the moves? Well, it also affected pretty much every Pokemon, which means my top 10 strongest Pokemon list needs an update, and let's get right into it with number 10 being Charizard. So Charizard is the 10th strongest Pokemon now. There's been like a lot of shifting between metagames and art types and strong Pokemon. What we can say is Charizard has cracked the top 10, so probably a lot of people are happy about that. And we can see right here is the stat total and the best move. These are pretty much the two biggest factors in deciding a Pokemon's strength, and we'll break this down later on in the video. So if you guys just want to get the mindless, oh man, which ones are the strongest, there we go. If you want the technical stuff, hang around till the end of the video because it's a lot more complex than that. Stat total is based off of stamina, attack, and defense, and the best move has stab, which is called same type as attack bonus. So if you ever hear stab being thrown around, it pretty much just means you get a boost to the power in your move if it's the same type as the Pokemon using it. This works in Pokemon Go, this works in the main series games, and that just kind of shows that everything coming together makes Charizard a pretty strong Pokemon. Number 9 is going to be Blastoise. So, water-type Pokemon, pretty overpowered in Pokemon Go, either just high amounts of base stats or the move Water Gun. So, Blastoise has a higher base stat total than the Charizard on a 566, and with its best move being Water Gun, it's still holding in the top 10 even though Water Gun got a substantial nerf. That was one of the biggest things, that a couple moves got buffed, but really Water Gun lost 40% of its base power, and Blastoise is still in the top 10, showing the strength and just resilience of water-type Pokemon. Number 8 is going to be Muck. So, Muck is a Pokemon that you really don't think is super powerful, but it's rocking a really high stat total at that 578, and Poison Jab puts in the work as a stab move that hits pretty hard in Pokemon Go. Number 7, Exeggutor. Exeggutor is a Pokemon that when you think top 10s, you don't think Exeggutor is the top 10 of much, but it actually gets some representation in Pokemon Go, which is pretty cool in my opinion. So it has a really solid base stat total of 586, and it also gets Zen Headbutt. So Zen Headbutt, one of the stab moves, I feel Exeggutor could probably do better if like Razor Leaf got a buff or something like that, because it shows the domination of water-type Pokemon, but at the same time, Exeggutor still a very respectable Pokemon, which brings us to number 6, Slowbro. So Slowbro, interestingly enough, has a drop in the base stat total in comparison to Muck and Exeggutor, but again, water-type Pokemon super OP. Even after the nerf to Water Gun, still going to be doing stronger than Pokemon that have a higher stat total than it. Either way, Slowbro comes through as a psychic water-type Pokemon that can use Water Gun and then just devastate most of the Pokemon. If you want a strong Pokemon, go with the Slowbro. But number 5, we have Arcanine. So Arcanine in games has a lot of good stats behind it, and in Pokemon Go has a 590 stat total with its best move being Fire Fang. So the reason why we see Arcanine doing so well right now is the nerf to Water Gun and also the buff to Fire Fang really helping out Arcanine. So yeah, that's right, its best move got a buff, same type attack boosting, and now we actually see a Pokemon that seems worthy of being in the top 10, if not the top 5, getting some representation in that Arcanine. Number 4, Snorlax. Probably one of the biggest changes and nerfs that a Pokemon has seen. Snorlax was surprisingly the number 1 Pokemon when I last did my list, and it has a 680 base stat total. So the highest stat total of all Pokemon in the game, except for legendaries, but you know, for like a regular Pokemon, Snorlax is rocking that 680, and its best move used to be Lick, interestingly enough. That Lick got a 50% damage nerf, and it knocked Snorlax down from 1st to 4th, and now it has to rely on that Zen Headbutt. So it's kind of showing a lot of those interesting things that can happen with some tuning, and why tuning moves is maybe one of the best ways to do buffs and nerfs, instead of like finicking with individual Pokemon and maybe creating some kind of crazy power dynamic that isn't expected. By taking out entire types, or at least adjusting for that, you can get some work done, and Snorlax has no same type attack bonus for an average quick move, so it's going to be dropped down to number 4. Number 3, Vaporeon. Vaporeon, also a very strong Pokemon, getting a bit of a nerf, strongest of the evolutions, and surprisingly over 600 on that stat total. Everyone's complaining, like, Vaporeon holding down every gym in the early days. It was like the easiest Pokemon to get besides Dragonite that was also the most powerful. It's also kind of weird, because when you think about Snorlax, single stage evolution. You just grab a Snorlax and you win with it. Vaporeon, at least an interesting evolution mechanic as long as you're doing like the Rainer glitch, or not even glitch at this point, just confirmed Easter egg. But there's a lot of dynamics behind it. Either way, Vaporeon got a nerf with Water Gun. Isn't as dominating, but it just shows the resilience of this Pokemon that it can hang in there even with the Water Gun nerf and still be number 3. Number 2, Lapras. Lapras just has a super high stat total as well at 638, and it doesn't even need Water Gun. It has Frost Breath. So I believe Frost Breath received a nerf, and Lapras is still the second strongest Pokemon. So instead of having Snorlax at number 1, now we just have Lapras at number 2. You catch Lapras, and you have an insanely powerful Pokemon that is actually really good at taking down the number 1 Pokemon, Dragonite. So here's where like the interesting power dynamic comes in. With all these water-type Pokemon in the top 10, grass types are going to be slightly more powerful against the average metagame, or like the most common strong Pokemon, which is why they can't be overtuned. You know, if grass types were any more powerful, then waters would be completely useless almost. And it just kind of shows this really weird balance. Now, Dragonite probably should have been the strongest Pokemon forever, like the entire time. I think Dragonite was like 3rd or 4th before all these changes came through, and it just didn't make a lot of sense. It's a very, very difficult Pokemon to get a hold of, and it's now holding down every gym, but at the same time, the second strongest Pokemon, a Lapras, has super effective moves against it, and still very, very respectable stats, so it's like, there's a struggle between that. Snorlax, Vaporeon, Arcanine, they're all still pretty good as well. So Arcanine's going to be good for like clearing the crop, and then the other Pokemon in the top 4 will hold down gyms pretty well. Strongest move, Dragon Breath, stat total 644, and that's pretty much it to it. So, want to know strong Pokemon? There we go. But what about your favorite Pokemon? Or just how we get all these stats in the first place? So, from the Sylph Road, which has been doing so much work in spreadsheets and getting great Pokemon Go information, we have this list right here of these stats. So what I was talking about, stamina, attack, defense, all these add up, you get total stats. After that, what we have is a breakdown between power of the moves, because the speed of the move and the actual move itself could change a lot of things. So the power of Dragon Breath, much stronger than Steel Wing, so you're going to be using Dragon Breath. Same with like Frost Breath versus Ice Shard, etc. We get totals, we do some math, and then that's how we calculate the strongest Pokemon. So that's how we can get some strange numbers like Pokemon with lower stats being ranked higher in some cases, or also higher stats being ranked lower like in the case of Snorlax, because it has Lick. So we have a 600 power move compared to 900 on the Water Gun, on the Dragon Breath, and even like low to mid 800s on the Frost Breath. Now, what about your favorite Pokemon? Like, I also think there could still be a little bit of like specific Pokemon balance. Gyarados probably deserves to be a little stronger because it's pretty crazy to get with how many candies it takes. And then I think that's the biggest thing. Like 2-stage and single-stage evolution Pokemon might need to be toned down a bit for just the difficulty of catching a 3-stage, or at least not difficulty but time investment, and then we can see other Pokemon. So if you want to use your favorite Pokemon, you can at least understand what the best move for this Pokemon is. It was surprising to see Lick as the strongest move on Snorlax, so maybe if there's not like a clear same type attack boosted option, or if you just have a bad roll, you might want to change that just to make sure your Pokemon is as optimized as possible. And then we can see, like, as it gets down, got some crazy things, you know, Electabuzz at 59th. Jolteon. Jolteon is just really sad as an evolution. It's ranked 54th because I guess there was the one offset. Either way, not even top 50 for the Jolteon. Pokemon that were absolute menaces in the first generation and also main series games like Alakazam. Really not getting too much representation. So Niantic has pretty much created this metagame in their own way, and I'm absolutely fine with that. That they're pretty much capturing that real life essence of Pokemon, that, you know, certain Pokemon just beat up on other Pokemon, or they have a perceived strength that is stronger than what you see in the games, or weaker depending on what the Pokemon is. And I think it actually turns out to be pretty balanced, but there's also some things that don't seem pretty fair. Now also, you can use this list for all kinds of things, like comparing stats. Chansey has the highest health and also some crazy total stats at 600, but it has like no defense and no attack, so the multipliers get offset. It doesn't really do good for offenses, and that's why Chansey isn't in the top 10, even though it has the top 5 stats. And then we see like the more playing around stats right here. After that, you know, Blastoise, Slowbro, Gyarados, all of this kind of adds up, but Charizard is pretty low as well on just the stat breakdown. So the power of moves is not to be underestimated. And then there's also the special moves. So special moves I don't think have too much effect like on these base stats just for like mashing and whatnot. With special and charge moves, if you want to know the strongest of them, you can go right here. It's pretty much like energy cost versus duration versus time versus like all that kind of stuff. And Stone Edge, actually the strongest move. Then we have Cross Drop. So critical hit modifiers, very, very powerful to carry. And then we can see some other things. Solar Beam got a pretty wicked buff in this 729 patch, which we can click right here and we can see all the changes. Yeah, Solar Beam went from 65 to 120. Hyper Beam from 70 to 120. So at least now Solar Beam fairly usable at number 10. Again, buffing Grass-type Pokemon. So Grass-type Pokemon holds it in there and then goes for the special charge move. It's going to be doing a lot better than it was beforehand. So that's just how the moves and stuff break down, and we can kind of see some of the craziness right here. You know, Water Gun going from 10 to 6, Lick going from 10 to 5, Bug Bite 6 to 5. So little nerfs and tunings. Fire Fang, almost a 50% buff, which is why Arcanine went catapulting into the top 10 like that. Rock Smash also getting a huge 3 times damage buff. Not really affecting Rock-type Pokemon too much, but at least better than nothing. You can also see charge moves gain changes. Aqua Tail, slight nerf. Dragon Claw, Discharge, slight nerfs. So just to make sure like there wasn't absolute domination from certain Pokemon, we get a little bit of tuning as well. That's why, you know, certain Pokemon only get moves, or a move is only on a few different Pokemon. So you can get the balance in that way and not have it be too bad. Poison Jab, Zen Headbutt also getting nerfed as well. But then Bubble getting a bit of a buff for those Pokemon that don't have the Water Gun. And I think that's really it. We have a simple sorted list. We have move data. So make your comparisons. Optimize your Pokemon as good as possible. And I hope you guys learned something. I hope this video really helps out. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much. And now go out and be the very best like no one ever was.